Hi, Jacob. How are you?
Hi, Baruch Hashem. How are you?
Good.
Good. Very good. Happy Lag Bomer. I think it's still Lag Bomer.
Yes, happy to come. I thought you would come last night to Ernie.
We got off a plane at the 9 o'clock. It was too late. I
I
would have
didn't know
come.
you were away.
Yeah, we were away. I would have come. We would have come, but
Mhm.
we weren't here, so we couldn't come. That's the way it goes.
Yeah. Where were you?
In Toronto,
Oh,
visiting Hyla's mom. She should live and be well. We try to go as often as we can.
I see.
Yeah. So we were there.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Ah,
233, Harold.
what is that? Two.
233.
Oh,
Yep. 233.
yep. Oh, there it is. Yes.
I have 10.
Mhm. I'm ready.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to learn what I've been doing wrong all these years. Uh-oh.
Never too late to fix it.
Yeah, I still have time.
Yeah. I think the problem is that it's Myrov is getting later and later. We
Yeah.
went to an early Myrov minion. Hi, good
Hi,
evening.
Ernie.
Hi, everybody.
Hmm. 233.
Say it again.
233.
Okay. We've been dealing with Kli Shemlachto Leissur, like a Kli, like a hammer or a power saw. The normal function is Leissur. We gave certain examples where you can use a Kli Shemlachto Leissur for permitted purposes. So now we're going to deal with moving a Kli Shemlachto Leissur after a task has been completed. A question involving a Kli Shemlachto Leissur relates to whether one may continue to move it after it has been moved in a permitted fashion. For example, we said you could use a hammer to break open walnuts. Okay, now you've broken the walnuts. Can the Kli be moved again? The Gemara Masechet Shabbos discusses the view of Rabbi Yitzchak, who prohibits moving even a Kli Shemlachto Leheter in order to use it to protect a Muktzeh object. The Gemara says that even according to this view, if one started moving the item, L'tzorach Makomo, he may then continue moving it in order to protect the Muktzeh object. Amar Yitzchak. Kishem she'ein noistin kli tachas tarnagolas lekabel beitzasa. You're not allowed to put a kli under a chicken to receive its egg on Shabbos. Kach ein koifen alea kli bishvil shalot tishaver. If a vessel, if an egg has been laid, you can't put a kli over it to prevent it from breaking. Ksovar ein kli nitel ela l'dovra nil Shabbos. you can only move a Kli on behalf of something that's movable. Remember, a Beitza Shenoiled B'Shabbos is Mukzeh, because something to be able to touch it on Shabbos has to be Muchan from Bein HaShmoshes. If the egg was laid Shabbos morning, so it was not Muchan from before Shabbos. So the egg, it becomes is Mukzeh. And therefore you can't move a Kli, even a bowl, which is a Kli Shemlachto Leissur, to cover this item which is Mukzeh. Meisvei Kolane Tiyufta. Rav Chisda brought many opinions that permit you to do this. Shani b'tzarach l'mkomo. So the Gemara answers, Rav Chisda permitted you to move something when you needed its place. So since you were moving, you had a heter to move it, then you can move it to wherever you want to move it. Because once you have a heter to move it, you can move it wherever you want. Now, Tosfos, in discussing this, notes that if one started moving a Kli Shemlachto Leissur for a permitted purpose, like moving the hammer to break the walnut, he need not drop it immediately once this purpose has been achieved. So once you break the walnut, you can then move it to, let's say, a closet that you wanted to put it in, right? Rather, he may continue moving it to the place he wishes to leave it. Aval kofa alea Kli. This is about the egg. Mikan poiskin. The hada kaimel and the dover shemlachto leissur osir. When you have a Kli that's a malachto leissur, it's only prohibited in a ladavka shein l'tzarach gufo. You don't need to use it itself for a permitted purpose, and you don't need its place or l'tzarach makomo. But if you're moving the Kli Shemlachto Leissur for l'tzarach gufo or l'tzarach makomo shari, then you can move it. And then comes the kicker in Tosfos. Im hiskil l'taltalo, you started moving it because you had a heter to move it, right? Because b'shvil either shetzarach legufo, you needed to use the hammer itself to break open the walnut, or limkomo, the hammer was sitting somewhere where you needed its place, and now therefore you were allowed to move it from there. Mutter l'hodlicha afilu b'chedrom, you could put it in your room if you wanted, once you had the permission to do it. And the Shulchan Aruch rules like Tosfos. Kli Shemlachto Leissur, mutter l'taltalo, bein l'tzarach gufo, bein l'tzarach makomo. So a Kli Shemlachto Leissur, you can move if you're going to use that Kli for a permitted reason, or you need its place. And then mutter lo lito misham lanicho be'ezo makom sheyirtzeh. Once you start moving it, you can move it to wherever you want it. Okay. So these sources discussed a case where a person started to move a Kli Shemlachto Leissur for a permitted purpose. What is the halacha if someone inadvertently started moving a Kli Shemlachto Leissur without any permitted purpose? So you didn't need to use the hammer to break walnuts, and you didn't need its place, and you inadvertently moved it. However, the Magen Avraham writes that even in this situation, you can continue to move it. Nearly the filu shachach v'not b'yod b'shayla taflo yosef. He says, even though you shouldn't have done it, he forgot, and he started moving it, you can continue moving it. The Rama also permits continuing to move a purse if one started to move it inadvertently on Shabbos. Misha shachach kiso olav b'Shabbos. He has his wallet on him on Shabbos. Let's say this kind of thing was tied to his belt. So he can walk with it to another room, undo his belt, the wallet will fall, or the purse that's connected to the belt will fall, and he can actually put it somewhere which is protected. The Vilna Gaon disagrees, arguing that the leniency only applies when one starts to move an item for a permitted purpose. So then continuing to move it is permitted. So basically, he's arguing with the Magen Avram and the Ramah. Linear, which is the Gra did that. Linear, I mean, they're both Achronim. The Ramah is an early Achron. The Magen Avram is a little later Achron. And the Gra is a later Achron than the Magen Avram. Is there a sugar in here? The reason why the Ramah permitted, or even, is because you had permission to do it in the beginning. Here where you inadvertently moved it, so you weren't allowed to move it. Just because somebody ate garlic and he has bad breath, should he eat more garlic? Well, I mean, basically he's using that as a sort of a phraseology. He's making an Aveira. Why are we allowing to make more Aveiras? The Mishnah Berurah, who's going to have to resolve this machlokas aposkim of major achronim, cites the achronim as explaining that the leniency of the Ramon and Magen Avram applies only to a Kli Shemlachto Leissur, but not to more severe forms of Mukzeh, such as Mukzeh Machmas Gufo. And therefore the Ramah only permitted continuing to move a purse if it was not a basis l'davar ha'aser, if one did not intentionally leave money in his purse before Shabbos. But if he did, then it would be a more stringent type of muktzah, more than a Kli Shemlachto Leissur. It would be a muktzah machmas gufo, and there the rules are different, as we will see. He understands that the Gra disagrees, even in the case of a Kli Shemlachto Leissur, and only permits continuing to move it if one started moving it for a permitted purpose. The Mishnah Berurah says, Kivan shu biyado shenad l'tzor gufo makomo. The Kli Shemlachto Leissur is in your hand because you needed to use it or its place for shayla taltal yoser. You can move it more. Because of Magen Avram, the Magen Avram expanded the leniency that even if he had forgotten that this was a prohibited Kli, and he moved it for no reason, the Magen Avram said, "Rishayla tatula yoiser," you could move it more. Even though the original movement of the Kli was not for the normal permitted reasons of either tzorach guf or tzorach makomo. Ayin b'achronim shechriu, ta'ayater lo shaykh el b'kli shemlachto leissur. So the other achronim paskind that the heter exists, that the leniency of the Magen Avram and the Ramah exists if it's a Kli Shemlachto Leissur, but not by muktzes machmas gufa, kigon mos, like money or avonim stones, v'kayotzben. And we're going to discuss other examples of what is a Kli that is muktzes machmas gufa. Uvebira gra choylek ala Magen Avram. He quotes the Gra and says that he disagrees with the Magen Avram. Elsewhere, the Mishnah Berurah writes that if dropping the muktzah item immediately may cause a financial loss, right? Coins could fall and be irretrievable. It's possible even a Gra would agree that moving the muktzah to a safe place would be permitted. The Chazon Ish claims that even the Gra only disputed the ruling of the Ramah with respect to muktzah machmas gufo, where it was a more stringent muktzah, but agrees that if one inadvertently picked up a Kli Shemlachto Leissur, he may continue moving it. So they parsed the Gra, even though when we read the Gra, it didn't say that, but they learned within the Gra that he was only machmir by muktzah machmas gufo. But muktzah machmas, which makes sense. The Gemara doesn't often argue with often a Ramah. He explains that this is because continuing to move the Kli Shemlachto Leissur is considered to be L'tzorch Makomo, as one wishes to free one's hand from the object. I see. You need your hand, so that's a tzorch makomo. So by being able to move the kli to your room, then the tzorch makomo is you need to use you need to have an empty hand. Normally we understand makomo as the iPhone is sitting here and we need the place, so we move it. But there the Chazon Ish is expanding it. Let's see this Chazon Ish. Nir medivrei agrot mechalek ben Kli Shemlachto Leissur l'shar Mukzeh. So he's saying that there's a chiluk between the Kli Shemlachto Leissur where he would go along with the Ramah, that if you moved it, even though you had forgotten that you shouldn't have moved it, you're allowed to continue moving it. L'shar Mukzeh k'mo shekasav shar achronim. Aval ein mechalek ben notal metchila beheter l'notal be'isser. He doesn't make a difference between whether you moved it originally beheter or not. So a Kli Shemlachto Leissur, says the Chazon Ish finally, even if you moved it inappropriately, you did not need its place. You did not need to use it for a certain function. You forgot and you moved it accidentally. You could still move it to a place where you want. Because you have to get it out of your hand. And it also falls under the tzorch makom. The more recent poskim, Shmir Shabbos Hilchos rules, like the Mishnah Berurah, that the leniency applies only to a Kli Shemlachto Leissur, except in the case of financial loss. So in the case of a financial loss, even if you inappropriately moved a Kli that is Mukzeh machmas gufa, like a stone or money, and you inadvertently moved it, if it's going to be a financial loss, you could continue moving it. He quotes the dispute regarding one who inadvertently started moving a Kli Shemlachto Leissur, right? Which we know is going to be permitted. Kli Shemlachto Leissur, mishigilu yoda beheter. If it's in your hand through a heter purpose, and we know what those are, you need its place, or you need to function. Kigon shetilta l'tzorch gufa, l'tzorch makomo, mutar lanicha b'chol makom sheyirtzeh. That's step one. You can move it to wherever you want. Koladu biyado, while it's still in your hand. Beinu chayav l'salko miyado miyad. You don't have to get rid of it right away. Im gomer hashib, which if, for example, you finished using it, or you opened up the space from where it was. No, you can continue putting it wherever you want. Then he goes further, step 2. Kli Shemlachto Leissur shegili yado shelo beheter. You picked up a Kli Shemlachto Leissur for no purpose, not to break walnuts, or not because you needed its place. Kigon shatoah, made a mistake. You put it in your hands for no good reason. Or any other muktzah item which you were not supposed to move, but you've now moved. So he says you got to get rid of it. However, in yellow hefsed mama, misiluk midi shel muktzah, if there's some financial loss, if you didn't put it in a safer place, you can bring it to a guarded place. Who is that? We know who that is. That's the Magen Avraham and the Ramah. Says he, could you give me a tissue? So I think we understand that sugya well. Let's see what Rav Yosef says. He's more lenient, permitting continuing to move all categories of muktzah, even if one started moving them in a forbidden manner. He adds, though, that it's preferable to be stringent regarding categories of mukzeh other than Kli Shemlachto Leissur. The Rav Yitzchak Yosef is in Los Angeles right now.
Yeah.
Misha Shachach Shayom Shabbos. He forgot his Shabbos today. O Shachach Shechefet Zem Mukzeh. He forgot that this item is Mukzeh. And he went against the law and he picked up the item. Whatever kind of muktzeh it is, a muktzeh machmas chisron kiss is an item that is an expensive item. Bein b'muktzeh machmas gufo, like a stone or money. Bein b'muktzeh b'kli shemlachto leissur, a hammer or a power saw. So this is the most lenient opinion we've seen so far. No matter what muktzeh, you can move it if you inadvertently started moving it. You don't have to get rid of it right away. Like the Ramah and the Magen Avram, that the leniency really was Kli Shemlachto Leissur. Which he says better to be stringent like those svars, which means the other muktzah items, if you forgot and moved them, you should get rid of them right away, unless it's a chisron kiss. If you're mekel, you have somebody to rely on in all of these dinim. Okay. Up until now, we've been talking about moving a Kli Shemlachto Leissur by itself. What about moving it with a permitted object that may be on it or near it? Right? We saw in source 8 that according to Abaya, one may only move a Kli Shemlachto Leissur in order to either to use it, which was Letzorach Gufo, like the hammer that you're going to use to break walnuts. Whereas Rava also permits moving it in order to use the space it occupies. So that's why we have both sort of reasons why you can move it. Abaya challenged Rava based on a baraisa, which only permitted moving a mortar if it has garlic or other food in it. We're talking about a mortar and pestle, right? A mortar is like a concave kli, and then you have like this, it's like a pestle is like looks like a mallet, right? And you would put garlic in the mortar, and then you'd use the pestle to sort of squash it and crunch it. Now, the Baraisa said you can move a mortar if it has garlic in it. Because remember, a mortar and pestle is, that action is something that, we don't do those kind of things on Shabbos. Now, let's say you want to use the mortar as a receptacle for garlic. So then if it has garlic in it, you could move it. But Rava responds that the Baraisa speaks of moving the mortar out of the sun in order to protect it, which usually would be prohibited. However, moving the mortar, even for this purpose, is permitted if there's garlic in it. Maducha, the mortar. If there's food in it, which is garlic, you can move it. Rava says we're moving it from sun to the shade, which normally would be forbidden to do. The Rosh learns from here that although one may not move other categories of muktzeh, even together with non-muktzeh objects, since a Kli Shemlachto Leissur is a more lenient category, it may be moved together with a non-muktzeh object, like the food, even when one's intention is merely to protect the Kli Shemlachto Leissur. And he quotes this as being the view of the Ravan, who was a Risha. Dover Mukzeh Machmas Belachto Shemlachto. You have a Kli like a hammer, whose the work that is normally done with a Kli, with this Kli, is normally prohibited on Shabbos. Get coordinates like a hammer of the blacksmith, Ukiotzban. Moving it from the sun to the shade, if it had a permitted item like a child or a loaf of bread on it, you could move it. Zeu Shoshaninu, and the Rosh says that's where we learn about Maducha. That if there was garlic in it, you could move it. Afagav deloy onru kikar otinak elabimez. When we talked about David HaMelech who died on Shabbos, and they didn't want to move his body, so they said you could put a loaf of bread on it, or a tinok, and then move it. But that was only b'meis. Also b'muktzes machmas melocha. Aval b'meducha kevin sheyesh alav Torah's kli, since it's a kli, shari l'tat lagav oichlin shaleh. You could move it with food. Kach nir l'Rabbeinu Abba. The Hashlama disputes this and explains that the leniency to move a mortar with garlic in it applies only because the purpose of the mortar is to hold food. And it's only permitted if the garlic was already in it. If the mortar has garlic, you can move it. From the sun to shade because of the garlic. The whole point of a mortar is for spices. That that means, when did they say you're allowed to use like a permitted item with a non-permitted? That was only a mace. No. The whole point of a mortar is for spice. That which we said, that bringing permitted items like a loaf of bread or a baby, and we said is only to be able to move a mace. That's only, you can't lechatchila move something that cannot be moved by putting a kikar on it. If it was there already, it's not that you put it there. It was there, then you can do it. And therefore he says that even a Kli Shemlachto Leissur, which we've learned now is a lower severity type of Kli Mukzeh, you may not place something on it, a normally permitted item, to be able to move it, says the Sefer HaShlomo. Now, the Shulchan Aruch is going to have to paskin, either like the Rosh or like the Sefer HaShlomo. The Shulchan Aruch writes that there is an opinion that permits moving a Kli Shemlachto Leissur to protect it together with a non-muktzah object. So he's quoting the Rosh. But he's bringing it as a yesh. Yesh matir l'tata Kli Shemlachto Leissur afilu michama l'tzayidei kikar tinak. So the Mishnah writes, sort of to explain this whole sugya, that many achronim rule in accordance with the stringent view and only permit moving a Kli Shemlachto Leissur to protect it if it contains an object that it was made to hold. But not to put something false that it doesn't have anything to do with on it in order to move it. So the mortar, which normally will hold garlic, so that can be moved, right? Lav dafka kikar hu adin im nosan shar chayvetz hamuter besoicha. We're not talking about, it only has to be a loaf, could be anything. Anything that you put into that kli, that would be roy to put there. Vinei dezu das harosh, right? Aval harbe marishonim, including the Hashlama, cholken al zeh usvirlei deloyit your kikar v'tenek elameis bilvad, that it was a leniency because of kavod abrius of the mace, not to have the mace sit outside in the sun. L'tat lo yedem aval lo b'shar dvar muktzeh, but not by other muktzah items. Afshu kli, even if it's a kli. V'chein ichri arbe achronim. The stringent view of that shloma is also the position of other rishonim, such as the Ramban and the Rashba. They explain further that there is no leniency to move muktzah just because one is also moving a non-muktzah object. Rather, the reason for the leniency is that the mortar is only considered muktzah due to its function for grinding, which is prohibited on Shabbos. Therefore, now it's instead being used to hold the garlic, which is a permitted function. It's not considered muktzah. Continues the Mishnah Berurah. When are we machmir, says the Mishnah Berurah? When there's something on this kli that has nothing to do with it. But if there's an item in it that is meant for it, like garlic in a mortar, that's, we grind garlic in such a thing. Or there's a pot and there's food in it. So, even if normally you would not be able to move that kli, if there's food in it, you can move it. Because a kli is Shemlachto Leissur, right? You cook with it. Well, you can't cook on Shabbos. So if a pot has food in it, then it could be moved.
What is Kli Shemlachto Leissur? I mean, you can't move an empty pot on Shabbos?
It seems that's what the Mishnah Berurah is saying.
Okay. Seems a little odd.
I
guess it's used.
We're not talking about a dish or a bowl, right? Those we do use on Shabbos. But a pot, I think it meets the definition of a Kli Shemlachto Leissur. Why not? Certainly like a crock pot, right? That itself is a cooking vessel. But even a regular, now, maybe if the pot is used multi-purpose. Right?
Yeah, they're often used to
most of our pots
transport.
Huh?
Well, we said earlier we're going to get the stuff that has a heating element. We haven't touched that yet.
No.
So I think we haven't gotten the crock pot. But the
We're
pots
not
are
talking about, Yaakov, we're not talking about a pot with food in it that you can move. We're talking about an empty pot.
But an empty pot is often used, to transport food, like from place to place. You put food in it. But I guess maybe, I don't know.
So if there's food in it, you'd be able to transport it. If not, it sounds like from the Mishnah Berurah that if there's a little bit of tavshil in the kli, then you can move it. Agava Michael. It seems from him that if there was no food in it, you would not be able to move it.
I couldn't take a pot.
It's a little bizarre to me as well.
Yeah.
It's not something that was in my orbit, but I think it meets it might meet the definition of Kli Shemlachto Leissur.
I mean, if I have a pot, let's
Not
say I
on
want to
Yontif.
take
For
items.
example, a pot would not have this muktzah category on Yontif because you're allowed to cook on Yontif.
Right. Okay. That was okay. So that's the answer. Because I say I might use a pot to take food to the sukkah, but yontif, it's clearly not much.
But even on Shabbos, you could do that because if there's food in it,
Right.
then you could.
No, but I'm saying I have an empty pot. Let's use
An
Shabbos.
empty pot, you want to take it to the sukkah.
Right. I want to put food in it and take it to the sukkah on Shabbos. Shabbos Chol Hamoed. I mean,
you want to take the empty pot out to the sukkah to take leftover food.
Correct.
Okay, well, it might not be advisable to do that based on what we've learned so far.
It's interesting. Okay.
Yontif probably wouldn't be a problem. However, one of the Achronim quoted as ruling stringently, Rav Shneur Zalman of Liadi, permits relying on the lenient view if being stringent will cause a significant loss. Mikol makom kosuv behagraz, the behefsed meruba yesh lahakil. So with financial loss, you could be makel with this as well. B'makom behefsed meruba mutar l'taltal Kli Shemlachto Leissur, af shelo l'tzorach gufo makomo. You could move the kli even if you don't need to use it. Now, by the way, by taking the Kli, which is a Kli Shemlachto Leissur, and you want to use it to pile food into it, you're using it. That I think would fulfill the definition of L'tzarech Gufo. You're using this Kli, which is normally used like a hammer, we said. You can't, it's a Kli Shemlachto Leissur, but to crack walnuts, you can do it. Well, this Kli that you normally use for cooking, well, now you want to transport food with it. I think that would meet the criteria of L'tzarech Gufo. And that's why you'd be allowed to do it.
What about walking from the house to the sukkah with the empty to then bring the food? That doesn't sound.
Well,
You have an Erev.
walking in your backyard, you're completely fenced in. There's no problem carrying in your backyard. You're talking about carrying?
Carrying it from the house to the sukkah empty. It's mukzeh, the pot, if it doesn't have anything in it.
No, but let's say when you have walnuts on your table and your hammer is in the garage. So you're allowed to get your hammer and bring it to your table to use it. That's L'tzarech Gufo. We're using the hammer for a permitted thing. You're allowed to eat walnuts on Shabbos, and you're allowed to break them open.
Oh, okay.
That's the concept of a Kli Shemlachto, a Kli that's normally a Mlachto Leissur, but you're using it L'tzarech Gufo. You're using it, the goof of the item, for a permitted thing. So we're saying that when you move a pot from the house into the sukkah to take food back into the house, you're also doing it L'tzarech Gufo. I'm trying to show that you could even move the pot even without having food in it, because it's L'tzarech Gufo.
So the Mishnah Brewer is talking about where he says you can only move it if it has a
with some
dish
food.
left in the pot, is
Yeah.
if you're not going to do for any permitted purposes. You just want to move it for some reason.
But you'd have a permission to do it because there's a dvar heter in it.
But it's only because of
which
that. I'm
applies to
saying
it.
without the dvar heter,
You wouldn't be able. You might not be able to move it.
Right.
Yes.
So I guess the reason you're moving it then is for some unknown reason, not L'tzarech Gufo, because then you could do it.
No, maybe it's Tzarech Makomo.
Tzarech Makomo,
It's
you'd be
also
able to do
good.
it. But if it's not L'tzarech Gufo or L'tzarech Makomo, a pot would be not allowed to be moved unless it had food in it, because it's a Kli Shemlachto Leissur. I think that's okay. That works.
Yeah, it does make sense. But I'm trying to figure out why would one want to move a pot if it doesn't have food in it and if it's not L'tzarech Gufo? Just because, okay. All right. Well, all right. Just beyond my pay grade.
Most of the time, it's going to be for one of the two reasons.
Exactly. Right. So what it's hard for me to conceive of a reason to move a pot.
Well,
If it doesn't have
say,
food in it and it's not L'tzarech Gufo or Makoma. But okay.
Don't say pot, say a tray.
No, a tray, Mario, is not muktzeh, because a pot is muktzeh, because the normal thing you do with a pot is you cook with it. That's something that's usher on Shabbos. So that defines it as a Kli Shemlachto Leissur. A tray is not a muktzeh, it's a Kli. It's a permitted Kli. Okay, but this is all very good. This is we are thinking with our thinking caps at muktzeh in a very careful manner.
Have you heard of Rav Shneur Zalman referred to as the Graz?
No,
I have not heard that.
no,
The first for me, the Graz. Okay, now I know.
no.
Okay, I mean I know who the Grizz is. That's the Brisker Rav, but the Graz, that's a new one. Okay.
The Garzen is Rav Zalman Nechemia is the Garzan.
Right.
Okay. The Gazran or something like that. Right. They call him normally the Balatanya, right?
I've never heard him referred to as the Graz.
The Graz.
Yeah.
But maybe there's another use. In other words, the pot is maybe used for other uses. So,
well, you're not talking about a flower pot.
no, but the pot. No, I'm just saying.
We're talking about a cooking pot.
I understand it's a cooking pot, but we don't know if some. I don't know when they're talking about when this was written. It's not
The Mishnah Berurah, he had pots. He knew what it's pots, cooking pots. He says, Shemunach b'kederek tzas me'atafshel kulam mutter l'tatel kli agav Michael. There's no question you'd be able to move the kli because there's food in it. Mashma from there, if the kedera didn't have food in it, you wouldn't be able to stop move it. Now we've said if you're going to use it to fill up food from the sukkah back, you're using the pot to transport. Well, then you're using it lagufo. That's permitted.
But it's still an empty pot. You're picking up an empty pot, which is muktzeh.
But you're allowed to use it. You're allowed to pick up a Kli Shemlachto Leissur, litzorech gufo, to use it for a permitted purpose. Transporting food from your sukkah to the Shabbos is a permitted purpose. That's not a problem. Like a hammer, which is a Kli Shemlachto Leissur, that you're allowed to move from your garage to your dining room to break home with walnuts. That whole walking with it, you weren't using it. So the same thing, you can walk with an empty kli because you're going to go get food from it in the sun.
Why would they bring a pot into the? Okay.
Into what?
No. Why is the pot the example?
Because it's a Kli Shemlachto Leissur.
There's no other.
Well, we talked about cornus, hammer. Okay, but a pot is definitely a Kli Shemlachto Leissur. A tray is not. A dish is not. We're allowed to eat on Shabbos. That's not. There's no malacha doing that. So he says, we're in the HIlchos Shabbos. B'mokom efsed meruba mutter l'taltel Kli Shemlachto Leissur. Af shelo l'tzorach guma makomo. So even though you're not using the kli for a purpose, or you don't need its place, if you place on top of that kli something that is a permitted item, odvar Michael or food, you can carry them both. That's a way to move an item. And Rav Ovadia Yosef rules completely like the Mekel and like the Shulchan Aruch. Kli Shemlachto Leissur, v'rotze l'tatel machama l'tzeil. This kli is in the sun. You want to move it into the shade because of damage. Shelo yignav or yoiva. It shouldn't be stolen or lost. Mutar l'tatel ayidei sheyiten alav kikar lechem. You can move it. You can put a piece of bread on it, or Kli Shemlachto Leheter, or a permitted kli. Va'az yiltatena l'chol makom sheyirtzeh. And then you could move it wherever you want.
Lucky they weren't talking about smoking pot at that.
What was that?
I said, lucky they weren't talking about smoking pot.
Smoking pot?
Pot today.
Marijuana.
Marijuana.
Right. Well, on Yom Tov,
You're right.
Shabbos you can't smoke, but on Yom Tov you could. People smoke cigarettes.
I'm doing a play on words on the word pot.
Oh, pot.
Instead of a pot of marijuana.
Okay.
Okay, let's learn the Machshava, 241. So this whole Shiur 1 on Mukzeh is regarding Kli Shemlachto Leissur. That's really what we covered, all the various permutations. And there's a summary on page 240. Okay. We begin this year by discussing some of the background and reasons given for why we have a prohibition of Mukzeh. If we take a further step back, we can suggest another broader theme that may help explain the reason behind Mukzeh. We learned in a previous Machshava section, back in volume 13, that according to the Pninei Halacha, Rabbi Eliezer Melamed, we perform Netilas Yadayim before eating a bread meal to symbolize that our hands, which are involved in building the world, must be purified and made holy before eating. Hayidei Yadayim v'etzbos, with our hands and fingers, mispatzos rova pulos enoshios. that is accomplished most human action. B'chochan shel hayadayim lasos masim tovim mo'ilim. Our hands enable us to do good things. Umeidich masim roim. If sometimes we could do evil things. Hadavar ba lidei bitu b'cholos tnuason hamiuchados. It's because our hands has special capabilities of movement. Efshar larimo tanel me'ala rosh. You can put your hands above your head. Efshar larid mata. You can lower them. Heinochzois, they grab things. Noigois, they touch. Umeshamshos bakol, they feel everything. Valkein hein alulos lichlach lechioser misharivor. They are prone to becoming dirtier than other limbs. And here I don't think he's just talking about physical dirt. He's also talking about spiritual dirt, I think. The whole point of a Suda is to get nutrition and strength. We purify our hands from the impurities that have clung to it. He calls it pollution. Again, I might say he was referring to both physical and spiritual. During our busy day. And when you do Netilas Yadayim, Mekachnosam Likras Suda, we pause for a minute and say, okay, now we're going to use our hands for a very holy purpose to give us nourishment. A similar idea can perhaps be suggested with respect to Muktzeh on Shabbos, which is alluded to by Rav Melamed. The rabbis, because Muktzeh is a rabbinic prohibition, prohibited us from moving items that are not appropriate for Shabbos. The Adam Mukzeh midaito, that means he puts out of his mind. Mukzeh oiso midaito. Shnei tamim yisodim leissur. There are two reasons for the prohibition. Lishmor al tzivyon Shabbat, to guard the atmosphere of Shabbos. Kiyom kedusha menucha, a day of holiness and rest. Chlal zeh shkama yadayim yashavto mitiltul, yishbetu mitiltul, should rest from moving things. V'taskut b'dvarim she'enam k'shurim l'Shabbos. They shouldn't be moving things that have nothing to do with Shabbos. And lasosya, it's like other gzeras of rabbis where they build a fence so we wouldn't even come close to doing some kind of isser. Lasosya actually avodim lasos melacha b'Shabbos. Natchil b'biur atam harishon. He starts with explaining the first reason. In order to fulfill the commandment of resting on Shabbos, tiknu chachamim kama takonos, the chachamim issued takanot shenoadu lishmor al tzivyon haShabbos, to protect the atmosphere of Shabbos kiyom kedusha menucha v'chalalan shlo l'taltal muktzeh. One of those is muktzeh. Od shematzinu shanavim hiziru al tzivyon haShabbos. The Nevi'im also talked about the atmosphere of Shabbos. HIlchos Shabbos shona mishel chol. The way you walked on Shabbos should be different. V'sichas haShabbos shona mishel chol. How you speak on Shabbos should be different than how you speak in the week. And therefore, Chachamim said, don't occupy yourself with the kelim that you normally use during the week. HaShabbos nikeres gam eitz lanoshim she'enam regilim lasok b'melacha b'mosachol. Then Shabbos becomes recognizable even for people that are not doing forbidden melachas during the week. According to Rav Melamed, we're on page 242. At least part of the idea behind Mukzeh seems to be that one should not use one's hands to handle all sorts of objects used for weekday activities, because one's hands should be used differently on Shabbos than during the week. Just like we use our mouth differently, we use our legs differently. Taken together with the ideas behind the Netilas Yadayim, perhaps we can suggest that our hands must be purified and elevated on Shabbos as well, in the same manner that we purified them when washing the Netilas Yadayim. The rest of the week, one's hands must be purified from the physical and spiritual dirt that may have accumulated during one's other activities on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday before eating bread. So too on Shabbat, we aim to purify our hands in a certain sense by avoiding the handling of objects used for weekday purposes that are not appropriate for Shabbos. By using our hands only for positive purposes on Shabbos, we thereby enable them to be elevated to a higher level, just like the rest of our body and our soul. Let us try to make observance and compliance with the somewhat complicated laws of Mukzeh into more than just following the rules. Instead, let us allow it to elevate us, enabling us to purify our hands on Shabbos and achieve greater levels of meaning and holiness. Okay. We will continue next week. Same time, same station, 8 o'clock, page 257, Kli Shemlachto Leissur, which we think is going to be, you would think it would be more lenient than a Kli Shemlachto Leissur. Then we're going to have things like a buses, so we'll go through step by step. I believe volume 21 continues Mukzeh. Mukzeh is going to continue, I think.
When are you getting it?
Yeah, when are you getting my 21?
I'm ordering it right now. We have plenty of time, but I'll get them sent to me. We have 22, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll get 20. I'm going to send an email right now. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.